We should be live, in theory. Hi, everybody. I don't know if we're live, but if we are, welcome to Heathen Talk. A little bit late.
Yeah, we're going to talk about stuff and things.
And things and stuff. So,
I'm going to be a bit of a pig and eat on air.
I just wish I knew if we were actually streaming.
It looks like we're streaming.
Looks like it from
I've got
here.
the YouTube up, and it appears to be streaming.
Yeah, I hadn't actually brought the YouTube up, which I usually do, but I also usually don't host. That's the best part for the first time in the history of Heathen Talk. Thorin is hosting.
What?
Because for some reason Josh couldn't, and we are unfortunately without Lauren tonight. She wasn't feeling well, so she's taking the night off.
Yeah. No. We're going to have to wait for not. It says we're coming through.
One of our best fans says we have audio and no video. And well, I don't know what to do about that. So, I've never had to use this program before. I'm kind of figuring it all out as we go.
Okay. Video output low. I don't know what's going on.
I'm also told we're that we keep dropping out.
Yep.
So I don't know what's up with that.
I don't know. This is weird. I don't approve.
I don't either. Should we try dropping off and going back into it again, see if anything gets better?
Yeah, let me, well, let's drop out of everything and try it.
Alright. Alright, in theory we're live again. Let's see if this is actually a thing now.
Says that we're live, says we've got good stream health, still not getting any picture.
I don't know why we're not getting picture. I know nothing about this software that I'm using that I literally just downloaded 5 minutes ago for those of you listening at home.
I don't know what's going on.
I don't have a clue. This is why Torn doesn't do this, because Torn doesn't have these spells.
Well, that's fair, but, you know, Violet, come take your dragon roll and bring me the other container and see if there's anything that's mine in there.
It's a very small container, and it's all salmon.
One of the salmon things is mine. But it's deep fried and spicy, I think so.
That looks like this.
Oh, okay.
Here. But I just got this guy. Yeah, it's got this. So the rest of this.
Oh, okay. Well, you go ahead and eat. I gotta figure this shit out.
See, I don't even see any controls for video on this thing. The best part is we're sitting here shooting this with each other while we're streaming live.
That's good.
Welcome behind the scenes, ladies and gentlemen, if anybody is actually bothering to listen.
You know, I'm gonna try something.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say something.
You want me to say something?
Yeah, keep talking for a bit. I want to
Kind of like that? I mean, keep talking. That's a hard thing for me to do. It's kind of the thing
Get
that
one of
I
your
do.
ranting monologues out of the way, and I'll keep interrupting.
Get one of
you.
my ranting monologues out of the way. I've got a ranting monologue for you. You know, about the fact that ranting monologues are important. I mean, seriously, when somebody starts a ranting monologue,
I gotta say,
you don't do what Josh just did when somebody starts a ranting monologue. You have to allow it to go to its completion. Otherwise, it has no purpose. It can't find its footing, and it's going to do nobody any good. In fact, the only
I'm
thing it's
gonna
going to
interrupt
do...
you because I actually may have a solution for us.
Okay.
Under settings in OBS.
Under settings in OBS. Let me find that.
We need to change the resolution to 940 by 512.
940 by 512. Well, that's what I get for doing what it
Trying to
said.
give quality, yeah.
Now I just gotta find that. For video?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'm actually gonna have to stop the feed again to do that. It won't let me actually change that in the middle of the feed. So, give me a second. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be back again after a brief interruption. Alright, in theory, we are live once again. I have no idea if we have video. I have no idea if any of this is working.
But wait, something's happening.
Is something happening?
Stuff is going on.
Stuff is going on? I still don't know if we have
Resumed.
video.
I'm not getting any video yet, though.
No video.
Not yet.
I got nothing.
One of you reprobates who's watching, can you hear us but you can't see us? Let us know.
Well, I know one person is at least hearing us, but they're not seeing us.
Which one person?
Kevin.
Oh. Well, I'm glad Kevin can hear the sultry sounds of my voice. It says everything is healthy and good to go, but I have no clue why it is not goddamn working.
Yeah, I no idea whatsoever.
Anyway. Fuck it. Let's talk about shit and stuff.
All right. So yeah, welcome to the gloriously well done second to last episode of Heathen Talk, the best heathen podcast ever to grace the waves, live for an hour and a half on Saturday and or Wednesday nights, depending on when you were catching us.
Also, probably the best heathen podcast on YouTube, period. Just gonna throw that out there.
No, I'll give you that. Best one on YouTube, period. So, normally you'd be seeing our beautiful faces, but you're not because...
Oh, I know how to fix this.
Do you?
I do. OBS, go into scenes.
All right, hold on. Let me figure that one out, because now I'm getting all sorts of scenes. Let's see here. Scenes. Okay, I'm in scenes. What do I do in scenes?
There should be in the lower portion of the program.
Plus, minus, up and down?
Yes, go plus.
Okay. It says enter the name of the scene.
Just call it whatever.
Okay.
And then you should be able to add sources. And you want to do a video input.
Sources. Add
or
sources.
Screen capture.
Video capture device.
Is there one that says capture screen?
Maybe. Hold on, let me go back and check it again. Video capture device. Window capture.
Do window capture?
Do window capture. All right. Create new or add existing.
Create new.
Okay. Oh, I see. This is actually making sense now. Okay.
And then there should be like an eyeball you can click.
Yes, eyeball. Okay.
And that should let you define which window you want to capture.
I can, clicking the eyeball either just turns it on or off.
Oh. Fuck.
I have no idea what, I mean, in theory, I've got something going.
Give me 2 seconds.
It's supposed to be...
So, I have mine set to display capture.
Uh-huh.
And I believe if you hit the
Go back there.
bucket at the bottom...
Display capture. Let me try that one. Okay. Whoa.
That's going to capture everything.
Yeah,
so if you're looking at porn while doing the show, don't do that one.
Wow, no, I'm not looking at any porn. That's kind of trippy. I've got that, big, like, picture and picture and picture and picture and picture going back to infinity thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting.
But if you do window capture and hit the sprocket, you should be able to define which window. One of the salmon things is mine. And that should be...
I mean, I don't know. Are we still having issues? Do we not have video?
We still don't have video, and it's given the resolution thing again. I see video.
What's that?
I see video.
Do you now? Like
Whoa.
or did it go away? Because I was in the middle of changing something.
Right now, I think we're going over the video and video and video.
Oh
and,
yeah, so I turned that off. I have no idea.
And then I saw my pretty face for a moment, and now I'm seeing the YouTube.
Okay, so let me go back to the settings to make that the way it was before. Yeah. So, there's your pretty smiling face for a second, and then it'll probably go away. Alright, so I'll just go here, and in theory, once the feed catches up, it should be showing exactly what's on my screen at the moment. Let me double check all my tabs. No, I'm safe. Alright.
I see a mouse, but I do not see video.
Yeah, give it a second to catch up. Let the feed catch up. I like, right as it started actually capturing video, because I didn't realize it was capturing video, I changed the setting to something else. Now I've changed it back to what it was, I believe. And it should catch up with showing the screen as it is on my desktop, which is your smiling face in poor resolution with my smiling face in awesome resolution in the bottom right-hand corner, because that's how it goes.
Well, I mean, not all of us can have the stuff. Still give me the resolution issue, but I'm not sure if that's something. Maybe I can fix it on my end. Anyway, so we're talking about shit and stuff.
We are. So we're going to talk about shit and stuff, like you said. And we wasted a bunch of time with all the technical difficulties stuff. So we're just basically not going to promise any length of episodes tonight. We're just going to talk until we don't. How does that sound, Josh?
I'm all for it.
All right. I believe I already said once, I think we were broadcasting when I said welcome to the glorious and well orchestrated second to last episode of Heathen Talk. Tonight we are without Lauren.
Our production value is the best.
Our production value is the best of any YouTube Heathen podcast that is broadcast live on Saturday night from supposed to be 7 until 8:30ish.
Your kitchen.
Civilized time. So you know what? Screw it. Let's just you just want to get the toast out of the way from the beginning.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
We were originally, because we haven't had a toast request in a long time from the audience, so originally we were just going to toast whatever faceless menial employee and or soulless inhuman computer algorithm that decided to take the reports about the AFA's racist Facebook page bullshit seriously and go ahead and ban them. We were going to toast them, but we decided that it was better to actually toast, heathens that were doing heathen things like we're typically supposed to. So we did actually get a toast request. Josh, do you have a chance to look that over?
I got the message. I thumbs up the guy.
All right. So the request comes in from somebody named Tristan Child, and he wants us to toast the Northern Utah Midgard Asatru Kindred. Apparently they're setting up Utah's first annual moot next Saturday, and they're also running a big donation drive the same day. Honestly, I'd like to know more about that donation drive. Figure out what that's for. What are they donating to, Tristan? I hope you're listening right now. I hope you suffered through our technical difficulties. And
Yeah, I'd like to know what it's for, and I'd also like to give some advice to the kindred if they get the message from this episode. It's not the first one that's the hardest, believe it or not.
no, it's not.
It's the second one that is much more difficult.
However, you don't get to the second one without doing the first one, so... And it's good to see more people doing state level or regional level type stuff like this. We know there's a
Absolutely.
few out there that have been going on for a while now that are going strong, but I think more try to start up and fail than not, so it's always good when one actually gets off the ground. So, I wish you guys all the luck. I hope that this works out for you. I hope this turns into a great gathering and resource for the heathens in your region. And here's next
to you guys.
Saturday. All right.
What are you drinking, Torin?
Me, I'm. Where's it go? Here's the bottle. I'm drinking Life's Trade from True Brewing Company. The use of the V instead of a U is because they are a bunch of unrepentant metalheads and they think it's awesome. That aside, these guys make some killer sours, farmhouses, and saisons. I've had a few of them now. This one's no exception to that. It's just your basic golden farmhouse soured saison, and it's pretty rockin'. So,
Did you just?
I did. They're okay. You know, this is let's see here. Where does it say on here? I looked this one up. This is like the first brew out of what the new bottling plant they're calling the Acid House or Acid Temple. I mean, metal is kind of what these guys do, so I'm going to go ahead and greet them in the fashion of their people.
Fair enough. When in Rome, as they say.
Exactly. How about you? Yeah.
I am drinking a very classic dessert beer here. It's Cascade Lake Salted Caramel Porter.
Oh, yeah. How is that
You
one?
can see that there.
Yeah.
It's actually... So I put it in the fridge before the show started. And my first initial tasting when it came out of the fridge, not impressed.
Right.
But it gets some temperature on it. And this is a damn fine beer.
Sometimes. It's the... if there are actually any brewers listening to this now or at some indeterminate point in the future, I've got a message for you. Please, for the love of whatever you consider holy, you really need to start putting on your cans what temperature range, your cans, your bottles, what temperature range you want your beers to be served in, where you're expecting the flavor range to be. Especially those of us that like to drink sours and stouts. It's a crapshoot whether that beer is one that ought to be drink chilled or not. So let us know. Come on, guys. It's pretty simple.
Well,
we want your beer to be the best that you can have it be for us.
It doesn't help that if you buy a beer at the store, it's either refrigerated or not.
Right.
Those are your two options.
Right.
They don't do any temperature control. And even up here at Total Wine, they're not going to go out of their way to tell you what temperature a beer is best at unless you go to one of their funky tastings.
No, I mean, that's...
And I'm not convinced they really know what they're doing there.
No, most of them don't. I mean, most of them don't for the same reason that just about anybody in customer service, you know, they know what they're told to know, and they're not always told to know everything.
Right.
So, I don't necessarily expect... Like, if I go to Total Wine, I'm talking to a dude, I'll pick out whether or not the dude or the chick is a beer geek or not. And if they're a beer geek, I'll probably listen to them. But if it's pretty obvious they're just somebody who's manning the beer counter for the day, you know, I don't necessarily expect them to know what's up.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, and then beyond that, if you go to a bar and you get something off tap, all that stuff comes out at the same temperature.
that is a damn dirty lie.
I did say a bar. I did not say a beer house.
Hey, you know, I know a sausage house where I can get beers at different temperatures.
I'm sorry, what one?
Schultz's?
Oh, okay.
Schultz's has different tap temperatures for different beers
Schultz's
because they know
is-
what they're doing.
I don't count Schultz's as a bar.
It's not a bar, but it's also not a beer house or a tap room.
No,
It's
Schultz's
it's a sausage
public
place.
house.
It's a pub. Yeah, it's a public house. You're right. It's not even a pub like you think about it. It's legitimately a place where you gather as a community and you eat delicious sausage and drink delicious beer and have a damn good time.
And hang out.
Exactly.
But my point is, for most Americans, when they go to get a beer, they've got two options:
Yeah.
cold or cold.
But, you know, I mean, at least I can know whether or not if I buy your beer in a bottle or a can, I can know whether or not I should refrigerate it or not. If it's a beer that needs to be served at like I don't know, 50 or 55 degrees, which is not uncommon for a stout, I can know that I should put it in the fridge and then pull it out a little while before I want to drink it. You know? But yeah, give us this information because I really hate it when I guess wrong. Especially if it's one that ought to be warm and I put it in the fridge and then I pull it out and it's like, meh, it's all right. And then all of a sudden I'm halfway through it and it starts to warm up and all of a sudden the flavors are just bam there and you're like, now I've wasted half of this beer drinking it when it was not right.
Right. Which is why I always like, if I don't enjoy the first taste of a cold beer,
You let it rest.
I'll let it rest for a few minutes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
And
there's some
eventually,
honestly,
I'll let it get to room temperature.
honestly there are
before
some
I
beers
write it off.
where you're supposed to start at one temperature and finish at another, and that's cool too. But my whole point is just put it on the side of the label. Let us know. Let us know. This is easy information. Put it right next to the ABV, maybe. I don't know. Put it in a spot that I'm going to look.
I'm going to throw this out there. Even if you were not going to give us temperature guidelines as consumers, tell your distributors how the beer should be stored.
Oh God, prime suspect. Left Hand's milk stout. It's a proper, true milk stout. It needs to be refrigerated. It will go off. It's not going to make you sick. It's just going to taste like crap if you store it at room temperature for too long. But without fail, I go into bottle shops and find it sitting on shelves at room temperature. At this point, I won't even buy the stuff if it's sitting in a cooling case because I'm sure that at some point it's been stored on a pallet at room temperature and it goes off. It's like maybe 10% of the time can I get a...
And it necessarily needs to be stored.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to point out that despite years of propaganda, 35 degrees is not the appropriate storage or drinking temperature for most beers.
It's the appropriate storage and drinking temperature for crap American lagers like Budweiser or Coors or Miller. Honestly, any beer whose advertising campaign is primarily revolve around how pure the water is, just barely above freezing is the right temperature to serve those at because that way you can't taste much of what's in it. Should we just like give up on the idea of Heathen Talk for tonight and do an episode of our theoretical beer podcast that we've been saying we're going to make for a while now but never made?
I muted myself and didn't realize it. I mean, we can talk about beer. You and I have a wide range of intersecting interests.
We really do.
Whether it's nerdery, beer. Fuck. Did you just click over to Facebook?
Me? No. I don't think so. I might have for a second, not thinking about it.
Because I looked up at the live stream and you were talking, or you were checking your Facebook.
It's entirely possible. So I'll tell you another thing about this being the first and likely only time that... oh, hold on a second. Sorry, my wife walked over here to show me a truly exceptional picture of my daughter. So I don't ever take... You know, the funny thing is I don't ever take pictures and post pictures of my little girl on social media because I don't want to be that guy. But since I don't do that, I'm going to do it to all of you on my live international podcast. No, so I was just saying, you know, since usually I don't host, what I'm accustomed to is flipping back and forth between, you know, half a dozen different things on my screen while I'm doing the podcast. I'm checking Facebook for people that are saying things to me there. I'm checking a YouTube feed. I'm checking the IRC, and honestly, sometimes I just get bored and check other things as well. So it's gonna, like, there's gonna be a few times here probably during the course of this episode where I'm just gonna randomly click over to my Facebook page or something like that and forget that the video feed on this is set up to be whatever's on my screen. Yeah, what's stupid is, like, I was trying to set it up. There's an option in there that appears to be able to make it so I can select exactly what the feed shows. One of them was telling me I was able to select it. It was going to show the Hangouts tab that we use to broadcast through our video through. And that was just giving us a blank screen for some reason. I don't get it.
Yeah, I've yet to figure out how to make that work. OBS is a great program if you were looking to start a video podcast or even just a podcast in general where you're recording things. If you're looking to capture gameplay for uploading later to YouTube or use in stock image or whatever, I highly recommend OBS. And if you can figure out how to make it work exactly right, please let me know.
You know, to be fair, I've got to admit that it's a fairly good program if I was able to stumble my way through it as quickly and under pressure as we did. I had some guidance from Josh, but to be honest with you, it was a fairly straightforward, self-explanatory program. Because that's not in my range of magic spells, but I managed to make them work without blowing anything up or turning anything into a frog, unintentionally.
Well, I mean, and that's a good thing.
Yeah,
and you're not showing, despite what Kevin says, there's no porn in those tabs.
No, that I checked that as soon as the feed started. I see a few Amazon tabs. I see some tabs over in one side for the various Google Docs type websites that Josh, I, and Toby are using to plan our super secret project that we're not telling you anything about, that we just like to tease at you occasionally.
Super secret.
Super secret. There may be squirrels involved.
There's like 5 people in the entire world who know what's going on, and I'm not even one of them.
Right. I see. You know, like 3,
I just work here.
I see like 3 Reddit tabs. To be fair, usually there's only 2. The third one's because somebody sent me a private message that, in theory, I should respond to one day, and just never have. I think it's been up there for like 3 days, and I'm a terrible person. I haven't responded to it.
So, it's almost 8 o'clock, believe it or not.
Oh well.
And something came up on the something did come up on the subreddit that I wanted to address, because I've written the person who said it off as a tool.
That's because he was a tool, and not even a useful one.
No. We were on the subreddit. We were talking about heathenry, and somebody mentioned that they thought it was about the preservation of Germanic.
You say culture or heritage?
To which about preserving, building a heathen culture. And some of that has to do with some preservation work, right? It's kind of important to do that as part of what you're doing. But the person I was talking to was insistent that because his family was from Sweden and Germany, he lived in a German culture in the United States.
Yeah, that's not how that works.
Even the Amish people don't live in a German culture. They live in an Amish culture.
Right.
And that's okay. That's good. That's fine. And we should just accept it. You live in an American culture. The very real struggle that heathenry faces is how to fit into that culture, just as a general whole.
Right.
Like, because a lot of our ideas, and you know, I've been reading up on Frith lately and trying to wrap my head around it even more. A lot of the stuff is not friendly to modern culture. It's just not.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I get it. You're sensitive and you're special. And yes, your great-great-grandmother was Swedish or German. Congratulations. So was everybody else's.
Right.
We all come from somewhere. But yeah, that's all I got on it.
Should we go ahead and talk about the extension of this? That's kind of the gentle end of that conversation. There's another dumber, more insidious, much more openly racist version of that is the idea that there is a such thing as white culture. Which there's not. I'm not sure how much we can say about that. I mean, I guess we can explain why there's not a such thing as white culture. Because white isn't a thing.
I don't... My issue here is that I have written about, and I've talked about, and I know I have friends who have written about and talked about how this idea of white, right? It is destructive, and what's the word I'm looking for here?
It depends on where you're going with it, because there's so many ways.
Reductionist. It is reductionist.
Reductionist. There, that's a good one.
And it is all about establishing this broad group of people who you can rely on because they look like you. That's not culture. That's not ethnicity. It's shared phenotypes, which are not that uncommon.
Right.
Like, I mean, come on, guys. If you want to talk about culture, you have to talk about everything from art to language to religion to food. And all of that comes into it. And just based on those markers, there is no white culture. There is no white food. Sorry. Doesn't exist.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's... The worst part of it is you use the word reductionist. It's destructive. It tries to homogenize culture. There's Swedish culture, and there's Irish culture, and English culture, and Italian culture, and German culture, and those are not the same cultures. They're vastly different from one another. They share a few common traits, maybe. Some of them do, anyway. But they're vastly different from one another, and then it gets even better when you start looking at the cultures that have developed in diaspora. You know, I make comments or jokes about being Swedish, but I'm not Swedish. I'm not from Sweden. I've never lived in Sweden. My parents didn't. My grandparents did. But you know, we're part of an American diaspora culture, which is in its way completely different. Just descended from actual Swedish culture. They diverged 100 years ago or whatever, and became something entirely different under an entirely different set of circumstances. So, you know, when I talk about being Swedish, I'm Swedish American, which from the actual Swedes I know actually is a pretty big difference. So,
right? I mean,
yeah, I don't feel any particular kinship to Swedes living in Sweden. I barely feel kinship to descendants of Swedes living in America. You know, we share a few cultural traits, and yeah, there you go.
but and it comes down to the same argument. When we talk about white, it really does boil down to people like me, people who look like me. It's not even necessarily people that are like me. Like me. That's what the whole goal is when we start talking about white culture. I can go from here to whitest suburb of Atlanta and feel completely out of place because I don't know how to function in that society.
Right. Well, I mean, society, kind of loose term there.
Okay.
Southern.
I don't know how to function in that particular portion of a savage land. But I do share a common culture with a lot of the areas up here, and it doesn't matter what neighborhood you plop me into up here, I can make my way through it.
Yeah. I mean,
Because-
it's simple. I mean, there's simple cultural markers that you miss. I was involved in an interesting discussion on one of our mutual friends' Facebook pages a while back that kind of devolved into talking about the response to somebody helping you when you're in need. You know, somebody sees you broken down on the side of the road, and you're having trouble changing your tire or whatever, and they come and they help you change your tire. And in different regions of America alone, the response to that is different. They were talking about, in the South, if it was your tire that got changed, you're going to offer them some money, and the person you offer it to is going to refuse. It's rude to actually accept it. Up here in Cascadia, the offer happens 3 times. The first 2 times you refuse it. The third time it's insulting not to accept it. 2 entirely different things, but these are things that are actually important to our culture. And I don't share those with every person who happens to have a deficiency of melanin.
Well, and the term itself is self-defeating, because typically whenever that comes up, the goal is some form of ethno-nationalism. And yet, it is akin to saying that all Asians should join together and form one country.
That's bleeding likely.
There are a multitude of cultures, a multitude of peoples. On the Korean Peninsula, there are 2 entirely different cultures, and they're the same country, technically. Well, according to the United States government.
Well, according to them and them too.
That's true.
There's your
So,
bit of
when you start
international knowledge for the day. As far as the South Koreans are concerned, they're in control of the entire peninsula. As far as the North Koreans are concerned, they're in control of the entire peninsula.
There you go. But to expect a diverse group of people who share just some basic surface level commonality to be beholden to one another is the height of stupidity.
Agreed.
And that's really all I've got to say about that. Stop being stupid. Tired of it. And if you're going to be stupid, get the fuck off the internet.
Or, at least stop talking in places where I'm talking, because I don't want to hear you. You annoy me. And you're demonstrably wrong.
Also, I'm just going to throw this out here. And if he's listening, I'm not apologizing. We live on a globe.
Clearly. I mean, if the Earth was flat, the cats would have knocked everything off of it by now.
It's true. It's true. And no matter how many pictures of turtles or elephants or ice walls you send me, or YouTube videos that prove that NASA is just a giant conspiracy to keep people out of Antarctica because it's a giant ice wall,
I've yet to find either turtles or elephants that are big enough.
I saw one once, but I mean, the globe it was holding was really small.
Oh.
And it was still holding a globe.
But were there any elephants?
No.
Then clearly it was not an accurate depiction.
Oh, this question was brought up by Kevin. Thank you. And I know he intended for this to be asked at a different time. He's going to get over it. So we mentioned earlier in our history that Asatru and heathenry were diverging, or had diverged.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain groups that are clinging to the title of Asatru simply because they're Norwegian or Icelandic, or have an Icelandic focus. If we can't tell the separation between heathenry and Asatru based on brand name, essentially, what makes them distinct? For instance,
Okay. Yeah.
clarify just for the audience.
Yeah, continue.
If there's a group in, let's say, Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
who practices a very heathen focused or a very heathen practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they call themselves Asatru because the deities they worship and the sources they use are all based on Icelandic research. How can you tell them apart from Asatru?
Worldview, the basic structure of their religion. As we've come to discuss the split between, the divorce, if you will, between heathenry and Asatru, what it comes down to is the basic bones of religion. I used the word worldview earlier. The structure of it. What is its function? How does it function? Heathenry is a largely, if not completely, it's not completely, but a largely externalized religion. It focuses, it's a ritualized religion. It focuses on the group intersubjective. The agreement of the tribe, if you will, on what is. And there are some things that you're going to find that are universal to the framework of heathenry. We often hear terms like Thu being thrown around as an excuse to do whatever the hell you want, but if the thing you're doing is basically inimical to the heathen worldview, then it's not heathen. One that came up in a recent conversation was weapons in a sacred space. There are different ways of defining a sacred space that you find throughout heathenry. Sorry, I got distracted for a second. There are different ways of defining sacred space that you find throughout the history of our heathen ancestors. But one thing that is as universal as it can be is the fact that weapons aren't allowed in a sacred space. So when you see weapons in a sacred space, that's not heathen. And, that's actually the one that I bring up because it's all too common in Asatru spaces. It wasn't that long ago that I went to a ritual to memorialize the death of a man. It wasn't properly a funeral, but it was something to memorialize his death. And I specifically went to the guy who I knew was creating the ritual and mentioned something about weapons because I had one on me, and he just looks at me all serious. He goes, "A Northman never goes anywhere unarmed." That wasn't heathen. He's not a heathen. He's Asatru. So, I'm hoping that's a pretty good starter of how to identify the difference between the two.
I think it is. And I think the other thing that comes up is attitude. There's no denying that both heathens and Asatru tend to be cocksure and 100% certain they're doing it right, regardless of what other people say. The main difference that I find is that those who have a predilection towards heathenry are willing to take a step back and analyze themselves after new information comes in. They don't just add stuff in willy-nilly because it feels right, because that's not how we do things. But they do, once new information is learned, step back, take a look at it, see if it fits the heathen worldview. And if it does, they change what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that answers that question.
It at least starts to answer it. It's a bit of a complicated question that...
This one's not any less complicated.
Awesome.
I'm going to read the whole thing.
Okay.
If we take it as a given that the growing divide between heathenry and Asatru is reflected partly in heathenry developing in the pattern of Theodish belief, and we take as a given that there are those who consider themselves heathen, but who reject that developmental model, is it a fair conclusion to see a further split happening in the future? If so, what might that look like?
Okay, first I'm going to say too early to tell. Second, and that's answering in the spirit of the question. But I'm going to move a little bit beyond the question and say that I don't want to take that as a given because I don't think it is. I don't think that heathenry is developing in the Theodish model. I think that the Theodes are damned fine researchers. They've got their shit together as far as that goes, and the fact is that they are helping us define what is heathen and what is not, and they're making good arguments. So from a worldview point of view, they are putting out a lot of the information, but what they're putting out publicly isn't Theodish, even if the Theodes, even if those of Theodish belief do cleave to it. They're going with that because it's heathen. Internally, the places that we do diverge are the places where they are Theodish. They are of Theodish belief and we are not. If that makes sense. I know that there's a lot of places that there are things that we've discussed it before, things where the structure and practices of Stoneshore are superficially similar to things that some of the Theodes are doing. But it's not because we're following a Theodish model, it's because the Theodes have done some good research on what is heathen, and we've looked at it and we've accepted it and we've gone with it. So naturally, if they're doing heathen things and we're doing heathen things, things are going to look similar. So the Theodes are doing a damn fine job of putting out the best information most of the time on what's heathen, but I wouldn't say that's making heathenry develop on a Theodish model. That just means that, what works. What is accurate is accurate.
Well,
and
I'm
the stuff outside of that is what defines a Theode or not a Theode.
I'm going to add to that a little bit. At the moment, and I can say this with every confidence in the world that I'm correct, the Theodish hold a temporary monopoly on research and work put in. They have the advantage. They've been doing it longer than the rest of us, and they have some of the sharpest minds in heathenry in their camp. One of our friends, I would argue, is one of the smartest people in heathenry, and he's Theodish. He's a Theodsman. So, yeah, things are going to, as outsiders, kind of look at what they're doing and try and build using the work that they've put in to build off of it. There's going to be some similarities at the beginning, but eventually you will see splits where Theodish belief will be, I imagine, a very highly regarded thing, but will look vastly different, even to outsiders, than other heathenries. But that will be because those other heathenries have started to put together their own, of, as Brian would put it, the 5%ers. People who are working hard, doing all the hard work, getting it put together. And that's where those differences are going to start to show up. But until we reach a point where our 5% hard workers aren't all sitting in the Theodish belief camp, it's gonna be very heavily influenced by the Theods.
Right. And I mean, and just to try to put everything I said a moment ago in a slightly simpler way of putting it, if you get two relatively intelligent individuals reading the same book, they're going to come to similar conclusions most of the time.
Well, and even if they don't, it's usually a matter of talking it out. We recently, and I'm not going to go into details because it'll come up later, but we recently had a conversation that I had read the same source material and I had come to a conclusion, but it was the wrong conclusion. And it wasn't until I talked to other people who had read those source materials who were able to point out the connection that I missed that I was able to see where my conclusion was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So you need... It's going to take time. You get the intelligent people reading things, they're going to come to different conclusions. There's going to be some peer review. And things are going to start to become similar until you get to a certain point, and that's where the regionalism will start to develop. And the regionalism isn't going to start to develop out of praxis. It's not. The regionalism is going to start to develop out of your local culture.
Right.
And so any divergence that happens is going to happen because Cascadian culture does this way.
Right.
Whereas Northeastern culture does things this way.
And I think, this actually goes back to the question before this a little bit too, is at the end of the day, if Stone Shore continues to develop the way it's developing and the Theodes keep developing the way they're developing, in 200 years, they're going to be very different from each other, but somebody from Stone Shore could go to the lands of White Marsh, for instance, and if they are so lucky to be invited into a ritual, they will recognize what's happening, and the same would happen vice versa. Whereas if either one of them went to Samasatru Kindred's ritual, they would have no idea what the hell was going on. It wouldn't make a damn bit of sense to them. It wouldn't even look like religion.
Right. And this again will trace back to the culture question. One of the things that leads to this idea of the united European culture, right, is the fact that there was all these similarities. But the similarities are born because those are almost cousins to each other, so they all kind of do things similarly. Whereas once you get an outsider in there, it makes no goddamn sense. Outsider. And so, yeah, if you invite an outsider into one of these events, whether it's a ritual or even... I would be willing to bet that just hanging out is going to look vastly different than not. So, in reality, I think that the culture question will feed back into where things begin to diverge and where you see the differences grow, which will then feed into how can you tell the things apart. Because until you get to the core level, you probably won't be able to. So until you're invited in, you're kind of stuck just going off what you can see on the surface level. And my co-host abandoned me. Hey, look, he came back. He does love me. Also, he didn't hear a word of that. So, yeah, I think when it comes down to it, you have to take all of these things kind of into account all at once. They don't make any sense when you try and compartmentalize where these differences are going to come in.
I'm just going to go ahead and assume that everything you said was mostly correct enough that I don't really need to have a recap. My beer was empty. I had to do something about that.
Mine's almost empty. So that answers both of Kevin's questions. And I don't see any questions coming up from the YouTube chat. If you guys have questions, let us know. I did get corrected by a troll. We do not live on a globe. A globe is a three-dimensional representation of the planet. The planet is roughly spherical.
I was going to go with Tesseract, but...
Well, yeah, I mean... But a Tesseract is 4 dimensionals.
At least.
At least. and I don't think we live in one.
I think 5-dimensional is actually the more correct term for a tesseract. But you have to accept time as a dimension.
I thought time was the 4th dimension.
Not when you're talking about a tesseract. A tesseract has 4 physical dimensions.
Oh, well, there you go. All right. The more you know. So, Sean says he's been watching us since October, and he's going to miss the live streaming. We're going to... I'm going to be honest. I'm looking forward to having my Saturdays.
Yeah, a little bit.
I'm going to miss talking to the fans. I'm going to miss some of this stuff, but I am very, very ready to have my weekends.
It'll be nice. I did want, while we have a delay waiting for our audience to do their damn job and give us questions.
I do actually have a third question from Kevin.
Okay, we can do this other thing later.
Kevin, I like your question. I'm going to skip it for now.
So are we doing the other thing now?
No.
Okay.
There was another question that came up.
Oh, okay.
One that needs to be answered.
Needs some strong words right there.
Supernuts060 asks,
Noble name.
Won't the gods decide who is practicing religion properly?
That is a question that needs to be answered. It's a question that makes the wrong assumptions. It makes the assumptions that religion is for the gods. But it's not. Religion is for us. It is how we interact with everything, including the gods, but also local whites, our ancestors. It's a framework of communication. And there's going to be people out there listening that aren't going to like the way I put that, people who I respect who probably aren't going to like the way I put that, and that's okay, because it's a really incomplete thought. I probably would put it much differently if I had a little bit of time to put some thought into it. Hey, there's another reason I'm going to be really glad not to be doing a live podcast anymore. I get to think longer about my words before I say them out loud.
But you're so good at just putting them out.
Just willy-nilly, whatever. I'll just say the thing. Eventually, every once in a while, I'll get something right. So, yeah, I'm trying to think about a better way to put that. So why don't you talk for a minute?
Let me jump in. Mm-hmm. So, the question assumes that the gods necessarily give a shit about what you do. Religion is a language. Ritual is a language. It is how we interact with them. So ultimately, the gods don't make the decision as to whether you're practicing correctly. They just don't notice if you're not. Because if you're not using a language they understand, they have no frame of reference.
I would argue that they can notice when you're not doing it correctly.
Yeah, well, I can also notice when my cat wants my attention. That doesn't mean I care. When my cat does the thing it knows will get me to do what it wants, then I care. If it's just going to sit there in the corner and lick the wall, I don't care. And yes, I just compared ill-formed religion to licking the wall, because that's what you're doing.
Well, what I was meaning by what I was saying there is, when you are, for example, creating a sacred space to hold ritual in, to interact with the gods, you are creating a space that is apart from the profane world, a place where the sacred can exist. And once you are inside of that, that is when the gods might notice you doing it wrong. For example, if somebody invites me over to dinner, I might be happy about that and show up. But if I show up and they hand me a big steaming turd on a plate with some cutlery, I'm probably not going to be that happy anymore. And that's kind of what's happening when you're doing it wrong. Is sometimes you're doing it so wrong, they're not even going to get the invitation. Sometimes you're doing it just barely right enough, they get the invitation, and out of curiosity they decide to show up, but then you give them a big steaming turd on a plate. So then they're going to react the way they react. It's not about, them making a decision of who's doing religion right. It's about them deciding whether or not you've made them happy or pissed them off. And also, when it comes down to it, they're only part of the religion. And often enough, not even the primary part.
Essentially, and the follow-up there is those who interact best with the gods will be favored. No, better knowledge or such things. That's also not the way this works. Those who do have the most proper interactions, and I'm going to use proper, not best, but proper, are more likely to get any requests that they make acknowledged in some way. But we live in a gifting culture, so if you're not giving properly, why would I give back to you?
Right.
So essentially the point is you need to do it right from the beginning, not just because the gods, but also because it's the language in which you talk to your ancestors, your ancestral divine. And if you're not talking to them, you're missing out on a chunk of it. And if you're not talking to the whites, you're also missing out on a chunk of it. There are all these things that need to be addressed, and if you're not doing it right, none of them are going to hear you, and then it's...
Masturbatory.
I've had a bit to drink, and I was going to say it's masturbatory, but that's not right, because at least masturbation is enjoyable. It's more like you're just making the jerking off motion.
So is shitty religion sometimes. Honestly, I know plenty of people out there that have this psychological feedback cycle going on, where their religion is almost entirely internalized, and if the results are internal, then the results are going to happen if they think they're doing it right.
God damn it.
If you go off and the entire point of your ritual is to give yourself some, good feels, and you expect that this ritual is going to give you good feels, the ritual is probably going to give you good feels. But if you do a ritual and you expect your crops are going to grow better, or that... I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of a more modern way of going about saying that, but... if you're doing rituals and you're expecting, things in the physical real world to go favorably outside of your mind, in the external world to go better, you better hope that you've got your game face on, that you're doing it correctly, because it's no longer inside you, it's no longer about you. So if your religion is you, you're probably going to be able to do it right. But if your religion is not you, then other things need to happen.
So, thanks, Super Nuts. We appreciate your input there. Now I will get to Kevin's question. We did start a little late, so I don't feel bad about asking this question.
Yeah, we do what we want. What are you going to do? Stop listening?
I think there's like 5 people listening, so...
We might lose some fans if we go outside of our time frame.
Oh, where'd it go? Great radio here. So this one is... I would define this as a softball question, because it's a hypothetical. If you could determine one change to the redevelopment of heathenry. What would you change? And why? No cheating and saying something like the conversion never happened. He's specifically talking about 1950s forward.
Okay, so we're talking about some... If we could change one of the fundamental developmental concepts of heathenry from when heathenry first began as a revival religion is what you're talking about.
Yeah, basically.
That the racists had never noticed it or been involved in its fundamental inception.
You know, strangely enough, that part concerns me less than the how long it took for the good sources to show up. I think if I was going to change one thing, it would be that the good sources had been readily available and well known at the time.
Ooh, how about that everybody had ignored Victorian sources from the beginning?
How about Llewellyn not being a publisher?
How about nobody connecting it with the Viking Age?
Ooh, that's a good one. How about people forgetting that Viking... how about people knowing from the beginning that Viking was a job description, not a people?
There's so many of these. We can keep going for a while, honestly.
I mean, seriously, the whole Viking thing, though, that would be like people thinking that there's a civilization out there known as customer service representative. That's the name of the civilization. Like, that's a job. I do it to get paid. That's it.
The primary function of my peoples is to create and install signs.
We're getting into some Star Trek level civilization building there.
Right? It's obviously also a global civilization with one culture, one language, and one religion.
Right, and that religion is sign installing.
Or two religions if it's required as a plot point.
Yes, I remember the episode where the sign installing civilization discovered the religion of electronics.
Right. Well, there was also the episode where half the planet thought that you should have a light background with dark letters, and the other half of the planet that you should have a dark background with light letters. Gripping television right there. That's what that was.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Brilliant storytelling.
Here's another one that I think... So, it's no secret that Asatru and the SCA share founding fathers, as it were.
Sure. Some of them, anyway. One or two.
Well, specifically Paxson.
Paxson is the one that pops behind you.
I would not... If I could change something, I would change that connection.
Change that Paxson was involved, or change that Paxson had a tie to the SCA?
I would go back in time and I would make her pick one. She could have the SCA or Asatru. You can't do both.
You can have lazy reenactment, or you can have Asatru.
See, I was going to go, you can have lazy reenactment or you can have the SCA, but that would have been a low blow.
I was being charitable there. I say that as somebody who enjoys dressing up funny and drinking in the woods for a weekend. That is one of my...
And then on occasion I go to SCA events. So
it used to be one of my hobbies. I say used to be because I haven't been to one in a long time. Because
it's been about a year, hasn't it?
Well, something like that. I might go to one this summer.
Because we went to that one last summer.
My wife wants me to go to one or two this year. I probably will.
She wants you to get out of the house, doesn't she? She's tired of seeing your face around.
Probably. I mean, how can you get tired of this? I mean, my mustache is epic. You can't get tired of looking at this. No, she just...
You let her know. I'll make sure you get to one.
All right. Honey, Josh says he'll make sure I get to one.
I gotta be honest. I got nothing left, man. There are no more questions, really.
All right.
We could bullshit about things we'd change all night long. We could go on for another hour about beer.
Easily. I do want to do one thing real quick. So in our toast earlier, we mentioned the moot in Utah that's upcoming on Saturday, I believe it was. Next Saturday. And that I mentioned a big donation drive that they're running. I did get a little bit more information from the guy who suggested that, from Tristan. And apparently they're planning on donating to an organization called Road Home of Utah that assists individuals and families experiencing homelessness in Salt Lake County and along the Wasatch Front, with a mission to help people step out of homelessness and back into our community. I will say, on my own level, from everything I know, that this is pretty much any organization with an aim to help the homeless that exists in Utah is probably doing a damn fine job, because as I remember, Utah is the one state that's really managed to kick ass at figuring out the homelessness issue. But
I read an article that said basically they ship their they ship their homeless to Seattle. So.
Well, everybody does that a little bit.
That's so.
That's not strictly a Utah thing. Everybody's doing that a little bit, but you know. And honestly, if it wasn't for that, we'd probably be getting the same props that Utah is for how we're handling it. But
so
we're importing. But the point is, no, everything that I've heard is Utah does a very good job at transitioning people out of homelessness and into becoming functional members of society. But they did mention that they've received a list from Road to Home of what's needed for donations, and the list is men's jeans, sizes 32 to 42, new socks, new underwear, coats, blankets, sheets, gloves, and hats, larger sizes of diapers, apparently, and then everyday hygiene items. So I don't know if any of you are in the Utah area that listen to us. If you are, then absolutely look into these guys. Check out, see if you can find more information about their spring moot that's coming up next Saturday. And, well, send us a message and let us know about it. I mean, that'll be going on during our last episode, but just because Heathen Talk is ending doesn't mean that the hosts of Heathen Talk are leaving the public heathen sphere. So, by all means, contact us, let us know how it went, let us know about the donation thing. Let us know what's going on in the world. We'd like to know.
So we did get a last minute question here.
Oh, did we? Let's do some more.
How do you think the AFA getting kicked off of Facebook might affect heathenry in the online space?
Well,
I'm going to take this one first.
Oh, go ahead.
It won't,
You're right.
because they're already back.
I was going in a different direction with that. Well, similar but different.
And sorry, it's just... So, one of the things that I think... Obviously, the thing that led to this was Steve stepping down as leadership. However, that was both a benefit to online heathenry and a detriment to the AFA. One, it meant they no longer had the same charisma behind them that allowed them to hide a lot of the, frankly, very racist and very new agey shit behind Steve's smiling face. And so it was inevitable that this would happen. Now with Matt leading and saying things that are asinine is the term I want to use. It is what it is, and it's not going to change a damn thing. I appreciate all the people who I appreciate all the people who celebrated that they got the AFA page taken down. Your victory was meaningless. They're back.
Well, See, my answer to that question is it's not going to affect online heathenry at all because the AFA has nothing to do with heathenry. Their religion is white people. It bears no resemblance to what Stone Shore's doing. It bears no resemblance to what any of the Theodes I know are doing. Has no resemblance to Hawkshearth or honestly any heathen tribe that I am familiar with is doing. It has nothing to do with heathenry. You might as well ask how the
Actually, so I'm going to rephrase the question for you here. You ready?
all right.
This is going to be good. There are two openly True organizations. I'm not counting the Troth because they don't have True in their name at all.
Okay.
So how do you think that the banning of the AFA is going to affect the True community?
As in capital letters, the organization.
Yep. As in TAC. As in Seth. I'm gonna not actually answer your question and pretend I was never online in the first place. I'm also the leader of an organization that takes money but doesn't actually spend it on the things that we say we're spending on it and don't actually have as much as we claim to have. Oh, by the way, we're going to send you out some really, really shitty paperwork.
So, I mean, this is kind of like Fermi's paradox, in the fact that we can sit here and discuss it all day long, but in the end, who gives a fuck?
That's the answer I was looking for.
I really don't care how it affects them because, well, again, they're not heathens. They are a prime example of the separation between heathenry and Asatru. I don't know. Maybe if the AFA. Well, yeah, because they're going to have to. You're going to have all those people that were perfectly comfortable with the AFA before they went full-on public racists that are going to have to go over to the organization that's still pretending they're not.
Basically.
Because as far as I can tell, that's the big difference between the two is TAC is pretending it's not racist, and the AFA stopped pretending. But why are we talking about Asaturs?
I was just entertained by the fact that there's only two openly Asatru organizations out there, and one of them got deleted off of Facebook.
Isn't there still
I guess there's
Asatru
AAA.
Alliance or whatever, AA, AAA, the one that sounds like a
Yeah,
battery.
but I mean, do they count?
None of them count.
I mean, I didn't even know they still existed until you brought them up.
I hear about them every once in a while, and my response is always, what the fuck does that have to do with the price of tea in China?
Dude, it's 8:45. I'm done. I'm out. I got a very beautiful woman standing in my room. You've got a very beautiful woman and a gorgeous little child in your room that need attention.
Yeah. And I believe both of these beautiful women have beer for us, right?
I'm sure mine could be persuaded to go get me one.
Well, I mean,
It would take some persuasion, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's so much persuasion, especially since the difference between yours and mine is yours likes beer.
There's that. In that case, man, you're not the boss of me.
And you're doing it wrong.
Have a good one.
See you one more time.
Gotta hit the stop streaming button.
If you hadn't
They're
said
gonna.
something, if you
This is
hadn't
gonna be
said
awesome.
something, nobody
No,
would have
this is
noticed.
fantastic. I love. They get to see us,
Yeah. If you hadn't said something, they would never have noticed because I realized that I had
Yeah,
to
but
do
now
it.
I get to pretend like you didn't know what you're
you get to
doing.
Pretend that. So everybody sees the screen now. If you're watching the video feed, you can see the weird back into the infinity thing. You see this little button that says "Stop Streaming" that my mouse is hovered over. Good night.